our presentation today is going to be a bit more of a shock and awe photo slide, and we're going to be discussing the modern use of Seminole Ranch and documenting some of the more direct human damage and activities that are documented on site, as well as some of the natural destructions or changes to the sites. So without further ado, we'll get going here. If it will let me progress. There we go. So just for folks know who, just so people are familiar with the area, Seminole Ranch Conservation Area is located in Brevard, Volusia, Seminole County, and Orange County, and it covers about 6,000 areas of conservation land. And the activities that are kind of promoted to this site include fishing, horseback riding, seasonal hunting, hiking, canoeing, general recreation activities for the St. Johns River. But what we'll be discussing is kind of this long-term history of use. We've monitored quite extensively with the St. Johns Water Management District folks in this area, and we'll be even heading back down on Friday to do a little bit more monitoring and checking out sites that we haven't gotten to visit to yet. But people are still actively using these sites. So we have sites that date back all the way to our Mount Pleasant periods and our Orange periods. Humans have utilized the St. Johns River for as long as the St. Johns River existed, and they still continue to do so. So we'll be discussing a series of sites that span from Brevard County into Orange County, and more specifically, we'll be talking about the modern human activity. So without further ado, our first site of discussion is Possum Bluff, which was first recorded in 1875 as a general vicinity. And when we were out monitoring, we weren't really able to locate a lot of what was originally described, but it's because the site is now currently the Hatbill Park, and it's a major location for launching into Seminole Rest, and it's actively used. You can see our lovely slide here with our kind of early morning visitation. We're out here during a weekday, not too many people, but the site does get used extensively for launching out ATVs when the marsh is low, also for launching other non-marsh friendly vehicles. Thanks for Graham for sending some of these photos. And it's also used for both permitted and illegal camping. The area can be used for overnight camps, but we have people who when we first monitored, there was a gentleman who seemed to be out there for quite a number of days. It's also a boat launch area for not only traditional boats, but also airboats. So there is a change to that environment from just general use. The ATV damage is quite extensive because when the marsh levels drop to a point where it is considered to be dry by anybody's standards, people forgo their boats and bring out any sort of all-terrain emphasis on maybe not all terrain vehicles. And the truck was removed by St. John's Water Management District folks, but it did take quite a bit of effort. Our next site we're going to talk about is Lake Cone 2, which I have not been able to visit. This was monitored by St. John's Water Management staff and was recorded in 1986. Unfortunately, the records do not indicate what type of site it is. We just know that it is a confirmed site, and it is a potential mound site known from the St. John's Water Management District folks. So we're looking for a pending update and pending a site visit here. But it is also known as a verified Google campsite. It is an unpermitted campsite that does have a 4.3 review on Google. With an emphasis that folks do not like the primitive camping, and it is pretty far out there, but that's because it is not a designated campsite. The structure was built illegally, or I guess I should say an unpermitted structure was built on the site to allow for airboaters to camp and to have a small reprieve. Finding these campsites is quite interesting, and seeing this is not the only site that is verified by Google. We also have Lake Cone 1, which is another site that was recorded in '86, and it is another potential mound site. And one of the ways that we can, at least through photographs, understand that it is a mound site is that I guess locals have deemed it the Jimmy One Thumb Green Memorial Mound. And so you can see the modern uses of the site. I have a unpermitted flagpole, and I can only assume an unpermitted bar of some kind, or at least a large structure. So a lot of these photos are mostly just show and tell, but we're pending a visit to confirm our site type here momentarily. Our next site up is Rock Island, which is affectionately known by locals as Bear Bluff or Bear Lake. And it is first recorded in 1892, and it's a long-standing native site in Shell Midden. It's also a prehistoric habitation site and midden, and does contain historic burials. And so the site today has, again, an unpermitted structure that has a long history of the structure being built, then burnt, and then unpermitted rebuilding of the site. And it is a great location for, well, it's a Airboat Club hangout spot. And so there's quite an extensive amount of airboat damage to not just the midden site, but the overall landscape. And you can see the airboat cuts into the midden here, and you can see this like black midden earth sticking out. And there's also just general trash. The flooding photo is from Hurricane Irma and the flooding that occurred afterwards. And the site is quite extensively used. And it is, again, another quote unquote Google verified campsite that has a 5-star review. And that has folks going out to the site and reviewing it as recently as 9 months ago, considering these screen grabs are from 2 days ago. So people of modern day are still utilizing this landscape. We also have one of our more intense sites. We have Orange Mound, which is the type site for orange pottery. It is first recorded in 1884. It's a prehistoric burial site and habitation. And it's generally experiencing your kind of stereotypical erosion site. It's also experiencing quite a bit of boat wake. You can see the cuts in the landscape. And the site is actively eroding, as you can see, shell and ceramic that are in the St. Johns River. The site has a massive unpermitted structure that has existed out there for quite a number of years. It does change, but people are out there actively camping. Now, this is not a Google verified campsite, but we do have evidence of folks bringing out generators, their own lawnmowers to do clear cutting to make their campsite, I guess, more habitable, including evidence of ground disturbing activities as the post hole digger, which was removed. But we can only assume, as though it's not documented, but we can only assume that looting is occurring on this site. And I will say, when we visited this site, they did have their Tony's seasoning out and ready to go. So the site is actively being used when we visited in March of 2020. The site's also used as memorials. So people place not just the Jimmy One Thumb Green Mound site, but we also have other memorial markers that are placed onto these sites for folks who have lived and utilized the St. Johns River. And we have 3 memorials specifically on Orange Mound. Our other site that we are going to talk about, or we are talking about, is Arrowhead Ranch, which is first recorded in 1949. It's a pre-contact shell midden and does have some historic use from St. Johns River folks. And this is an actually designated campsite. So this is permitted camping, has a permitted structure built by St. Johns Water Management District. And it does show minor signs of human activity, such as small little airboat damage, but it also has shoreline reinforcement in areas. So you can kind of see the difference between unpermitted structures versus permanent structures and how people maintain those campsites. We're speeding right through this, but general observations, and these are the only sites that we were able to confirm modern day use. A lot of sites that we monitored in the St. Johns River are heavily protected. Thankfully, this is Graham cutting away through some grasses here to go monitor a site that no other person is going to be able to access or is just generally dissuaded from trying to access the general site, because you do have to cut through quite a bit of grass and marsh. And I will say, when we pulled our airboat up, immediately afterwards, about 5 or 6 alligators just dove into the water. So it is protected not just by the natural environment, but also the animal environment as well. We also kind of observed, just generally by going back through these photos, that the sites that have permitted camping, so like Arrowhead Ranch, have less damage to them. And that's not, it could be from any cause of reasons between the St. Johns River folks know who is at these sites since they are permitted. It could be because they are maintained by the St. Johns Water Management District folks. And it could just be because they're not illegal structures and people are not actively living in permitted campsites. And the other general observation is that people are still using these sites and these areas for generally the same purpose throughout history. General observations that we've viewed within the St. Johns Water or the Seminole Ranch area, we have our natural activity, which is what could be expected of any tidally influenced water system. We have erosion, we have flooding, we have tree fall, we have storm damage, but the human activity tends to be a little bit more aggressive and more glaringly obvious. And that's from the airboat cuts, the automobile and ATV damages, the unpermitted structures, the evidence of camping, of trash pits, fire pits, and general boat wake erosion is deemed in certain areas that you can kind of discern what it would look like. What is interesting to see is that the historic use and the modern uses are somewhat similar. We have sites of burial and remembrance sites, and we have modern day memorials that are placed. We are having pre-contact habitation sites. We are having modern day camping sites. We're still seeing the area utilized for its natural resources, hunting, fishing, etc., and just general making use of the landscape. But our kind of just summary statement is that although there are these dramatic descriptions of, or dramatic examples of how the natural environment is changing on its own or through human cause and influence climate change, we are quite seeing an increased amount of traffic of people utilizing these resources in a semi and to full-blown destructive manner. But these human activities are causing some of the larger, more dramatic impacts on resources within the St. Johns Water Management District. And if we were to take just kind of some mathematics, if we were to assume that out of all the sites that we have monitored, we have roughly 75% of our sites have modern human activity documented and is not, or negative activity has been documented. So I will end this up further because I just wanted to mostly show photos of the dramatic changes over time. But I'd like to thank everyone here, and specifically like to thank the St. Johns Water Management District staff and Graham and Brett for always asking if we want to go out on airboat rides to go monitor some sites. So thank you so much.